Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships. Let's talk today about something that I was talking about someone recently called protective ghosting. So let's face it, the basic guidance out there fundamentally is that somehow ghosting is bad, that it's shirking responsibility, it's cowardly, it's avoidance, and this idea that it's not good for you and it's not respectful. I think most of us know what the party line is on ghosting, and many of us may even agree with it. But when we veer into the arena of narcissistic relationships, sometimes ghosting might be the only way to proceed, especially for people who have histories of narcissistic relationships or trauma. And this is something we can call protective ghosting. The way our laws are set up, that, I don't know, maybe in our society, the way that people are entitled to their day in court, I actually think that there's some people out there who believe that they're entitled to a conversation with you. Not really. There is no court of human relationships. Now, listen, when two healthy people are involved in a relationship, people who are capable of regulating emotions, of hearing the person's other side, of having empathy, of showing compassion, showing kindness, in those cases, ghosting is not only not good, it's probably not good for either person in the relationship. It That final conversation you have with someone may be about closure, it may be to hear another person's feelings, it may be a goodbye, but having that can really make a difference. But that's not this. Protective ghosting is about safety, about not enduring more abuse, about no longer engaging because it isn't good for you. It's one thing to explain yourself once to a person, but if they just won't get it, can't get it, deny your experience, having every time you see a person be a replay of the usual BS, it's not good for you. Protective ghosting is something that comes up in narcissistic relationships and enabler relationships. And even as the person is doing the ghosting, they will acknowledge the discomfort of just ending contact, but they cannot see another path forward. The first variant we see of this is the ghosting, the protective ghosting that may happen early in a relationship. You meet someone, there's red flags, there's discomfort, there's your discernment kicking in. You actually trust your instincts this time. Something about that person left you feeling uncomfortable enough that you didn't even feel comfortable offering up at this point, I don't think I want to spend any more time together. Why? I don't know, because maybe something in your gut told you that you think that this person might get angry or rageful or manipulative or lash out, whatever it is. You may know in yourself that based on your own core wounds, that there's wouldn't be good for you and you don't need it. Or maybe when you did try with another person and try to set a boundary on initial dates, or even with this person, you tried to set a boundary or something in early dates, the red flag you saw was a short fuse or irritability or lashing out. If you have just met someone, you don't owe them an explanation, and you sure as hell don't owe them a final conversation. Trust your gut on this one. I'm sure someone in the world talking badly about you because you ghosted them, that's probably going to happen. But you don't want to see them again, so who cares what they have to say? And if that's what feels easier, to not talk to them again, there's no need to step in and offer an explanation. I remember once feeling obligated to give someone a one last meeting before ending contact. That culminated in a 6-month stalking fest. I was trying to do the right thing. I knew it would be bad. I was right. I was right. I would happily protective ghost upon meeting a new friend, colleague, anyone, if that felt safer. If people think I'm a coward, that's fine. If it means not sleeping with a knife under my pillow, I learned the hard way what it means when you don't protective ghost. Not everyone deserves a closing conversation. There's also the protective ghosting when you've got toxic friends who don't seem to take the hint. Don't underestimate the power of the narcissistic or toxic enabler friend. These may be people who are friends with both you and maybe an ex-partner, or friends who always had to dominate, or friends who are competitive, whatever it is. And when that point comes that you are finding that you are attending to the friendship out of misplaced obligation and that it is taking a toll, it can be challenging to think about how to step away from it. Some friends don't take the hint and will keep haranguing you. Some are experts at inducing guilt from you. There may be that point you just have to stop to preserve yourself. Be prepared for an onslaught of be prepared for an onslaught of texts or emails or calls. Why aren't you answering my calls? What did I do to deserve this sort of thing? Block if you have to. Remember, you're protective ghosting because you want this person out of your life, and any conversation you have with them is going to be a manipulative dead end. Protective ghosting may also come up when it's either unhealthy or maybe even somewhat unsafe for you to have to talk to them. In some cases, this may be a safety thing. Listen, in a world where restraining orders are very difficult to come by, protective ghosting may be the only way to disengage. With a person who's sort of mildly stalking, sort of stalky or bullying or malignant, the protective ghosting may result in an amp up in their stalking behavior. You might see constant reaching out, angry messaging, and even showing up where you are. Why aren't you responding to me? As though you owe them a response. Documented it all, and at some point, in most cases, it will de-escalate. But they don't like not getting the last word. And you're ghosting them is an ego injury for them. Any loss of control for the narrative they don't like. And after a narcissistic relationship, your sympathetic nervous system is on edge, and having to talk with them can be very destabilizing, especially when there's no point. They aren't listening, so any explanations or feelings you're sharing, they're not being heard. And it's invalidating to share just to be gaslighted, mocked, or shut down. At these times, no longer engaging, no longer responding, it's an act of self-protection. I know, though, that protective ghosting is not always a possibility. Many a co-parent with a narcissistic ex would love to be able to protective ghost, but it's just not an option given the nature of most co-parenting agreement of minor children. Some people may find that protective ghosting doesn't work in family systems where they want to have contact with some, but not all, family members. Protective ghosting may also not be an option in the workplace where you gotta show up to get paid. But it is an option in many relationships that end. And once the antagonism of a relationship is clear, further engagement may do nothing. So pulling out may be the safest thing that we can do. Be prepared, though, that you will be shamed on the back end. What do you mean you didn't have one last conversation with them? You may even be called a narcissist yourself for not being willing to talk to them again. You also might be called a coward, immature, or childish. People may even want to blame you for what went wrong in the relationship. After all, you ghosted this person, so maybe you were the problem. It's at these points that knowing your truth is key to survival. The recognition that something didn't feel right, and so you feel no need to say yes other than because we are told to say yes to that. You have the right to not say anything at all. I think about how many narcissistic people feel entitled to have people talk to them. I recently read an article about a man who felt so entitled to a woman responding to him that he literally stalked her down the street and even threatened her, simply for not talking to him. I have read other reports of people who simply didn't feel comfortable with someone's DMs or messages, and so they don't respond. And the other person would escalate and call the non-responder all kinds of terrible names. In the world we live in, protective ghosting may actually be something we have to teach to people to survive. Some people just don't listen. Some people cannot take a hint. And some people feel entitled to your time and presence. Nobody is entitled to that. To keep showing up to someone to hear the same harangues, and insults and gaslighting and manipulation, that's kind of masochistic. If you want to make a clean break for your own well-being because it doesn't feel good or safe or that there's any point to it, you have that right. Many a person has gotten stuck in a toxic relationship for many, many more years because they didn't feel comfortable ghosting them, and there was no way to come to an amicable split or have a productive conversation. With narcissistic folks, an amicable split is about as likely as a huggable porcupine. Sometimes you just gotta go, and you don't have to have that one last conversation. That's a choice you can make. And if it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't feel safe, and it does feel pointless, it's okay. You can just go to protect yourself. Thanks again.